The Pilot Safety Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to reducing general aviation accidents by providing free and low-cost safety classes. Our speaker today is Gary Reeves. Gary has over 5,000 hours. He's an ATP, a Master CFI, II, and MEI. Gary is also an expert in Garmin avionics and ForeFlight. He has instructed over 200 students and is a Young Eagles flight leader. He's also the 2014 Long Beach District Instructor of the Year and FAA Safety Team Member of the Year. There are 97,000 flight instructors in the U.S. Less than 800 have ever been named Master Instructor. California only has 14. And now, please welcome from Big Bear, California, Gary Reeves.
Welcome everybody to the Garmin 430 introduction video. It's going to be about an hour long. It's a free video put on by our volunteer group Pilot Safety. It's sponsored by masterflighttraining.com. Thank you. They do expert G1000 and Garmin training inside your plane or in one of our planes in Southern California, or they'll come to you. So thanks. We have some class objectives we're going to get tonight. It's well worth the wait to stick around till the end, even if you have quite a bit of experience on the Garmin 430. We're going to cover some basics, function of keys and knobs, the power on self-test, updating databases, COM, nav, and source tuning, chapters and pages, custom waypoints, flight planning, IFR procedures, and some emergency tricks you may not know about. This really is a basic introduction video. It's an overview to get you used to the 430 and teach you a couple tricks. If you'd like to become a pro, somebody like me who just kind of knows it inside and out, come spend 4 hours with us. We have a DVD available on our website now that has very detailed information on every chapter page, explanation of functions, shortcuts and pro tips, and a bunch of actual in-flight movies. So we'd like to invite you to check that out, and it helps support all the free work that Pilot Safety does. Let's start with a basic overview of the keys and knobs. The power volume squelch button is in the top left with a C for COM. If you turn it to the right, you'll turn the unit on and turn the radio volume up. If you turn it to the left, you turn the volume down, and if you go till you hear a click, you'll turn the unit off. And if you push it, you'll activate squelch, which will enable you to get weaker distant signals, like if you're trying to pick up an ATIS from 50 miles out. But more importantly, this is your best chance to avoid a radio failure, because most radio failures are people tuned to the wrong radio in their audio panel, or they have the volume turned down. So before you transmit, especially for the first time, if you push squelch to make sure your volume is set, you'll eliminate a lot of embarrassment. Button or COM volume button to the right. We will now let it load and verify the system. The way to quickly get to the verify is when you see something on the bottom, push enter, and it will move to the next screen. Now you'll notice that my aviation database is valid because it's white and expired. And an expired database would be yellow. So true or false, you can legally fly IFR with an expired aviation database using a Garmin 430 or 530. That's correct. It's absolutely true. If you can back it up with another navigation system, you just can't use it for approaches. So even if your aviation database is expired and your terrain database is expired, you can still and you should file slant Gulf because it will allow you to go to intersections as long as you can back it up and fly en route. As your sole source, or as your primary source of navigation, you just need to be able to back it up. And remember, you can't shoot a GPS approach with it. All right, let's talk about the nav radio volume. That's marked with a V for VOR localizer panel. And you'll see the V-lock window just below the COM panel. Very similar. If you twist right, it turns volume up. If you twist left, it turns the volume down. And if you push it, that will allow you to hear the Morse code ident of the nav aid that's active as long as you're within range. The COM flip-flop does exactly what it sounds like. If you look at the COM window in the upper left of the unit, 136.975 is the active frequency, with 118.0 in standby. It's highlighted blue because that's a tuning bar that we'll talk about later. If you push the COM flip-flop button, it would switch that and bring 118.0 to the top and 136.9 or 75 to the bottom. The nav flip-flop does the exact same thing. 117.9 is the active VOR or localizer. If we push that button, that would bring the standby frequency of 108.0 up. If we push on the COM VOR localizer button, that moves the tuning bar from the COM window to the VOR localizer window. If we turn the big knob, that will change big numbers. And if we change the little knob, that will change little numbers. So I'm going to move the tuning bar by pushing it again. Now if I turn the little knob, I can change the little knob or the little numbers in the COM window. Change the big knob to change the big ones. Then I'll push the COM flip-flop to make my standby active. Push to send the tuning bar to the nav window, big numbers, big knob, little number, little knobs, and push the nav flip-flop to bring 113.6, which is LAX, into the active nav aid. The map, which has several different pages, all in the nav chapter, starting on nav page 2 in the 430, and it's the default nav page 1 on the 530, has a range button that allows you to zoom in and out. If you push the down button, you will zoom into a smaller scale. So right now it's showing 50 nautical miles. If you push that, it might drop down to 40, 30, or something else. If you wanted to see a bigger picture, you could push up to change it to a larger map scale, and you'd see a wider area. The clear button does several things and is very important. First of all, if you have something highlighted on the flight plan and you push the clear button, you can then push the enter button to confirm and remove it from the flight plan, which we'll demonstrate. It will also declutter the map. Getting rid of airspace and obstructions and various roads and things will make it much easier to see the map. And most importantly, anytime you get lost, and it's pretty easy to get lost in a Garmin system, if you press and hold the clear button for more than 2 seconds, it will automatically default you back to nav page 1 and you can start again. So here we are. I'm going to press and hold clear, go to nav page 1. One click to the right will take me to the map, and I will zoom out. I can zoom in, and if I push the clear button, you can see me decluttering the windows. Now I can zoom back out and do anything I want. So that's how those buttons work. Direct to, unfortunately, is the most commonly used button in Garmin systems, and it's usually done incorrectly. Most people who own a Garmin, that's the only button they know how to work. It's a real bad idea. You definitely need to take some training and spend a lot of time learning these systems, because especially in an emergency, if you don't do these things right, they can actually end up killing you and causing all kinds of problems. But Direct to kind of does what it sounds like. If you push the Direct to button, it will always ask you if you want to go to the next waypoint in your flight plan. You can also then use the cursor knobs to change it to do something else. The cursor knobs, just like it sounds like, if you push it, activates the cursor. If you turn the big knob, that moves the cursor. And to change things, you need the little knob, which we'll demonstrate in just a second. The procedure key is used for us IFR guys. It pulls up a procedure menu where you can add instrument approaches, arrivals, and departures to your flight plan. The flight plan button gets you to the flight plan pages. Although everything in the Garmin is chapters and pages and generally handled by the cursor knobs, the flight plan and the procedure are unique and you must actually push those buttons. So you're going to press that to bring up the two flight plan pages. The message button, when you get a highlighted yellow warning saying you have a message, if you push it once, you're allowed to read the message. Pushing a second time takes you to the previous screen on the Garmin. The OBS is a pretty unique button. You don't push it very often. You really only push it when you want to prevent automatic sequencing of the flight plan. And I'll show you an instrument reason to do that. You might also use it for a DME hold or other situations like that. So why would you use the OBS key to prevent flight plan sequencing? Well, like I said, you may want to track a distance from a certain intersection or a VOR, and you may need to do a hold or a DME arc that's not charted. Really important pilot safety tip for our instrument pilots out there. You're all probably pretty familiar with time, turn, twist, throttle, talk. Just add and touch. Because the CDI key is the most commonly missed key and gives you a whole bunch of problems. So you'll notice that just above the CDI is a green annunciator that says GPS. That means the unit is sending a GPS signal to your OBS. So if I push that button, now and only now will the localizer 117.95 send information to your OBS. So what's the most commonly missed button push on IFR check rides? You guessed it, it's the CDI button. Because people take off, as they should, on GPS, it's always more accurate. So whenever you depart, you should always use GPS as your flight plan. However, when you start an instrument approach that is not GPS based, like a VOR, a localizer, or an ILS, if you don't push that CDI button, you're still tracking GPS, which will A, on an ILS, not pick up a glide slope because you're not getting that information, B, lead to an instant failure of the check ride. Alright, nice thing about this is you don't have to worry about avionics lighting. There's a built-in light sensor for the Garmin 430 and 530. It's a little photo lens just above the comm flip-flop. Will automatically adjust brightness in the screen to match the ambient light in the cockpit. So when it gets dark out in the cockpit, it'll think about that and then it'll automatically dim that screen so you can protect your night vision. If you're going to use it in day, when it realizes it's bright out, it will automatically go to max brightness to make it easier to see even in sunlight. Easy way to test this is with a flashlight and a finger, and you'll get the same results. Let's do a power on self-test. Going to turn the comm volume button to the right. That will turn on power to the unit. And you're going to see several different splash screens about copyrights and database notices. It's going to take a few minutes to warm up. You can speed through this later by, after a couple seconds on the home screen right there, start pushing enter. But you don't want to go too fast because you're going to miss a critical self-test screen that most people don't use. So getting pretty close here. The obstacle database is expired. It's yellow. The database for aviation is current. I'm going to push enter. And now it says the lateral CDI should be half left. It is. There should be no lateral flag out of view. That's correct. The vertical CDI should be half up. That is correct. and the vertical flag should be out of view. That's correct. You'll also notice both nav and GPS lamps are on. Then he says the annunciator's turned to about 294. Well, that's correct. If I spin it to test it to maybe 269, it should then match. That is a required pre-flight checklist you must do every single time. That's in the POH supplements that you're supposed to add. If I big knob back up to full fuel and push enter, it will realize I've topped off with gas. Big knob down to OK, I'll push enter again, and now it will start acquiring satellites. So is the self-test really required? Well, yes, that's a legal requirement. It's inside the POH supplements. I have a wonderful avionics guy if anybody needs a referral. I took my Cessna 206 out to Chino, said, here's my money, like a new to me factory reconditioned Garmin 430 WAS with all the bells and whistles installed. He said, not a problem. He did it on time. He did it on price. I got out there with another pilot to fly it home. I turned it on and I did a self-test, and it failed the self-test. It was not getting information from the GPS to my OBS, the Omni Bearing Selector. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So I went and found a technician, and he goes, oh, well, don't worry about it. The GPS works, just not the OBS. Bring it back, later and we'll fix it. And I'm like, no, that's a new OBS. That's a new GPS. I can't legally use it unless this thing works. Well, it found out that a technician who had put it in, who had been installing a different model of Garmin's very frequently, had just accidentally put a wrong jumper system in, a wrong jumper setting rather. It was a very easy human error. It was very quickly fixed. Boom, I'm gone. What's interesting is the pilot who I was flying with said, oh, I never knew you were supposed to do that. I've never done that. And most pilots, I do a lot of in-person training. Hey, you're in Wisconsin, New York, I'll come to you, I'll train you in your plane. Not a problem. But 90% of the pilots I train in Garmin systems skip that self-test, which makes it then illegal for navigational use. You got to do it to make sure things are working, otherwise you'll just never know. My aviation database expired August 20th, 2015. The easiest way to change it is to turn the power off, make sure it turns off completely, flip up the handle on the left card, pull it out, and it should show the IFR W label, which means that's the IFR WAS database card. To update your IFR database, you'll need a skybound adapter from Jeppesen. You're going to insert the card with the label facing the same side as the Jeppesen logo. When you push it in gently. You should never force it. If you're forcing it, you could bend a pin and damage your card or break the adapter. Take the USB cap off, and we're going to plug it in to any USB port on our computer. For a Windows update, click the Start button and select the Jeppesen update. Jeppesen services. It will now come up asking you for your username and password. Click OK. You'll get a license agreement. Click Agree. It will now contact the Jeppesen servers and see if your subscription is current. You'll notice I have two subscriptions available, one for my 430 and one for my 300. Let's fix the 430 and hit Start. You'll notice it should automatically detect the Garmin Skybound G2 and click Continue. If it does not automatically detect the Skybound G2 interface, you may have insert the card upside down. Please make sure the label and the Jeppesen logo are on the same size. It will now erase and reprogram your new data. At this point, you're going to get a pop-up message that, again, most people just click OK, and that's not correct. What you need to do at this point is click on the View Alerts and Notices on Jeppesen.com. That will take you to the Jeppesen Notices website. We're going to click on View All Aviation Notices and Alerts. I'm going to click on Region and change it from All to the United States. Then I'm going to change subregion for this example to California. Now, I have the Western United States because I teach mountain flying all over the Western United States. You need to check every state in your database because if you look down, Nav Data Alerts, there's one critical alert. We need to click on that now. And what's really critically important is that if you read this, you cannot use the Garmin430 nav data for 2 departures out of Oakland International. That's the Sindel 2 and the Catfish 1 RNAV departure. And if you're coming out of San Diego, you can't use it for the Border 6 or Lindsay 4 departure. I don't know what specific problems happened on these two, but it is not correct. This is one of the big advantages FlyQ has over ForeFlight. FlyQ, if it has any coding problems that it gets from the FAA, it will not georeference an instrument approach plate, where ForeFlight still will. Garmin will put it into the flight plan, but if you don't look at these notices, you won't notice it's not correct. You may attempt to fly it, and you could have a pilot deviation, a near midair, or all kinds of other problems. If you own a flight school and you keep your database current, you should print the PDFs out and keep them in the plane. If you rent from a flight school and they keep the databases current and you're using it for IFR, it's important that anybody can go to the Jeppesen website and do that. To reinsert your card, make sure the label is to the left. Push in the open slot firmly but gently and close the tab. Then turn on the power button by twisting the COM button or COM volume button to the right. We will now let it load and verify the system. The way to quickly get to the verify is when you see something on the bottom, push enter, and it will move to the next screen. Now you'll notice that my aviation database is valid because it's white and expires September 17th, 2015. The obstacle database does not need to be current for IFR or VFR use. The aviation database does not need to be current for IFR en route if you can back it up with other means. However, it must be current if it's your sole means of IFR navigation or you wish to use it for IFR approaches. Now, I've shown you how to update the Jeppesen database. If you'd like the obstacle and terrain database updated, that is something you get directly from Garmin. If you'd like a software upgrade, that's something done by the avionics technician. So everything is based on chapters and pages. Big knob changes chapters, little knob will move between the various pages inside the chapter, this one being nav. You can see me going from terrain to my departure airport stuff, to my actual position, GPS status, and how to put in vertical navigation. To go to the next chapter, I'm going to turn the big knob to the right. That'll take me into waypoints, and I can take the little knob to scroll through waypoint information. You can change any of these waypoints by activating the cursor and changing the airport name up at the top, which we'll show you just a little bit later on how to use the cursor, big knob, and little knob on the menu buttons. The last page is user waypoints, which will create a new one for you in just a few minutes. The next knob takes me to the auxiliary. This is covered in detail in our 4-hour DVD, but this is where you'd put in a flight timer to check your gas tanks or to calculate a true airspeed or anything like this. The nearest page is all the way to the right. It always goes to the airport first, which is page 1, and I want to show you another important one here, which is the nearest flight service station. That's actually critical to know because 122.0 is now deactivated. EFOS, what you call Flight Watch, 122.0 anywhere in the continental United States has now been decommissioned. There may be a few lingering stations, but overall it's out because it's not necessary, primarily because of people like me who get their weather on iPads with ADS-B, or you might be getting satellite weather through a Garmin system. But it really is redundant and not necessary. We have flight service stations all over the continental United States that can do en route weather and pilot weather reports, or PIREPs, which is the only thing that EFOS could do. But unlike EFOS, flight service stations can also open and close VFR flight plans, file new flight plans, and change flight plans. So it's actually just better to go to a flight service station anyway, but that's why they closed it down. The nice thing about having the Garmin system is you'll always know the nearest frequency. We really do cover every single page in much more detail in the 4-hour DVD, but this is what all the pages are. There's the default nav, which is an OBS on the 430. The default nav on the 530 is an OBS combination map. Number 2 is the map, which is what you normally will use. Terrain, navcom, position, satellite, and vertical nav. These are all the pages in the Waypoint chapter. The auxiliary chapter, again, that's where all the functions and setups are, and we cover those in quite detail. And the nearest chapter, including the one on the bottom left, where's the nearest flight service station, and it tells you, well, it might say you need to listen on this VOR and transmit on this one. It's got all the information in there. Let's do a quick basic flight plan. If I push the flight plan button, that'll bring up the flight plan chapter. I'm going to activate my cursor by pushing. I'm going to turn the little knob 1 to the right to make it active and change it. Big knob to the right. Change it with the little knob. Big knob to the right. Change it with the little knob. And then confirm Long Beach by pushing the enter button twice. Little knob to activate it. Little knob to change it to Papa. Big knob to move it. Little knob to change it to Delta. Big knob to move it. Little knob to change it to Zulu. Paradise. Enter to accept. Little knob to activate it. Little knob to change it. Little knob, big knob to move it. Little knob backwards to get to the numbers quicker. Big knob to change it. And let's go from the flight school in Long Beach to my home in Big Bear. Well, that'll work, and that's my active flight plan. If I push the cursor knob to get rid of the cursor, and then push the menu button, that will bring up all my menu options. And I can use the big knob to move the cursor and scroll through my various options. If I want to store it in memory, I'm going to push enter to copy my flight plan, and it will pick a number. I'm going to say, yeah, number 2 is fine. Now if I choose the little knob to change to the stored flight plans page, there it is. Activating my cursor, I can now push enter or menu and activate my flight plan on a different stored flight plan. Activate my cursor, select Long Beach to Lima 35, Menu, activate my flight plan. Unfortunately, I'm already here and I need to go to Long Beach tomorrow, so I'm going to push Menu, scroll down to Invert, and it will now take me back home. Couple cool tips for y'all. We can put in a custom waypoint like the special flight rules area in Southern California. The special flight rules goes from about 8 miles south of the Santa Monica VOR straight to the Santa Monica VOR and is a Bravo clearance route. So I'm going to put in a custom waypoint named SFRA using the big knob and the little knobs. I'm going to change that to the Santa Monica VOR using, again, little knob and big knobs. When I've got Santa Monica identified, I'm going to push enter, and that will move my cursor over to the radial. I'm going to use my little knob to change it to the 132 radial, big knob to move the cursor, and then push enter to move it to distance. I'm going to make it 8 miles south, which is just south of Imperial Highways, if you're familiar with it. Okay, everything looks good. I'm going to enter on create, and now it's stored. If I now push the direct to button and push enter twice to confirm, it will now take me direct to the special flight rules area. You'll notice that my other flight plan, Long Beach, Seal Beach, Long Beach, is now no longer active because when you push direct to, it stops your current flight plan if you do anything except your next waypoint or something stored in your flight plan. Auto tune is a really handy feature if you'd like to use it either from your waypoint or your nav menus. If you want to tune automatically your radios without hand dialing it, it's a great and easy way to do it. I'm going to push my cursor button. Then, if you look, my standby frequency, highlighted by the light blue tuning bar, is currently 119.8. If I simply push enter, it'll move the tower frequency over and move the cursor automatically to the next one. Then all I have to do is push the COM flip-flop and change it to make it active. I can then just keep auto-tuning every time I re-switch my COM flip-flop. It makes it really, really convenient. Some IFR tricks. Here's some in-flight footage of an IFR using a procedure turn. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this is not a hold, this is a holding pattern in lieu of a procedure turn, meaning I only want to stay in it once unless air traffic control says to stay there or if I ask. So remember, it's not a holding pattern, this is a holding pattern in lieu of a procedure turn. You only do it once. So it looks like I'm getting pretty close to OSIP, and it's even going to tell me how to enter the hold. It's going to say hold parallel. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure what heading hold parallel would be. Oh, well, it just says turn right to 123 in 7, 6, 5, and it'll count down seconds. It's going to lead your turn, so it'll always make you turn in exactly the right time. We're going to turn the heading bug, which is how this autopilot tracks it, and now we're tracking outbound. You'll notice I have an OBS on the bottom that shows I'm on it, but the direct track in the upper left is 303 opposite my course. I'm always going to put my direct track in the OBS to get ahead of it because that's my inbound course. I'm tracking 128 magnetic outbound, but my direct track back in when I turn inbound will be 303, and that's what I should set in my OBS. Now you'll notice the estimated time en route is going up because I'm going away from that intersection. However, this is a 4.0 mile hold. GPS holds are not based on a stopwatch or time, they're based on a distance. And the Garmin430 will actually take into account your ground speed, crosswinds, and everything to make sure you turn to keep that inbound leg exactly 4 miles. You can zoom in, see a little bit better traffic. So again, if you look at the ETA, I've gone over a minute. You don't turn in a minute, you turn when the GPS tells you to turn or air traffic control does. You can see my student's finger and my finger rapidly gesturing, pointing out traffic and other creatures. When it's time to turn, you'll actually get a flashing white warning in the bottom right, counting down 10 seconds and telling you what to turn to. In this case, we're going to use the heading bug because that's how this autopilot is hooked up. So it's going to say, turn right to 348 in 3, 2, 1, turn now. Okay, so we're going to spin the heading bug to 348. Now this is a trick you need to know. You don't want to spin a heading bug too far past, because if you spin it too far one way or the other, you might actually go past the bottom of the airplane, which would confuse a simple autopilot and make it turn the wrong way. So you always stage it. You notice I paused just like that. And look at that. Now you'll notice my distance is over 4 miles. Correct, because it increased in the turn, but my inbound leg will always be 4.0. So this is how I actually like having it set up. I like having a flight plan on my Garmin 430 and a moving map on the 530. If you're like me and my personal plane only has a Garmin 430, what do I use as a moving map? I use an iPad. I really do recommend FlyQ. It is by far the easiest and fastest to learn and use. If you're a professional hardcore IFR pilot, especially if you're an ex-charter guy like me, you're going in and out of busy airports, you got to calculate a weight and balance on the fly. ForeFlight and WingX are much better, but ForeFlight, yes, it'll do a weight and balance. Yes, it will load an expected instrument clearance. You can open and close flight plans directly from the app, but it is more complex and takes me longer to teach a student than even a G1000. So unless you're a professional pilot, you may not need all those features, and something like FlyQ is much easier to use, and that's why I recommend it. But they're both excellent programs. Now we're turning left, and you'll notice we're turning left before we're on the line because the GPS calculating out your ground speed and winds will lead your turn to make sure it happens every single time. Especially if you have a coupled autopilot and you have the choice between a GPS track and a ground-based nav aid, always go GPS. The GPS signal is much straighter, much more reliable, much more accurate. GPS beats ground-based nav aids over and over and over in every single way. Just make sure you understand it, and you take a couple hours, a minimum 3 to 5 hours of flight training from an experienced master instructor, so you really know how to use all the parts of it. Watching a short video like this is not going to qualify you. All right, now the problem is the GPS thinks we're stuck in a hold because it doesn't recognize it as a one-time procedure turn, which means I'm going to need to remove the hold from the flight plan. Pardon me. So what I'm going to have to do is open up the flight plan menu, activate the cursor, highlight the hold, hit clear, enter to confirm, and remove it so it will now sequence to the next waypoint. I'll do that again on the 430. Activate the cursor, highlight, clear, enter confirm. Now it will auto sequence to Gunny. Then I'll bring up the map again on the 530. If I simply press and hold clear, that will default me back to the number 1 nav page on the 530, which is the OBS and the map. Press and holding clear on the 430 just takes me to an OBS. And now we're inbound to the final approach fix, which is Gunny. Now, it says my direct track to Gunny is 303. The instrument approach plate listed as 301. That's because the Garmin is calculating out my winds for me. So if your instrument approach plate says 300 and your Garmin says 304, the 304 is actually correct. So let me show you, so you can look at an instrument approach plate, how to use the OBS button to go missed. So right now I'm outside of Lynchburg. I got my little orange plane outside the Lynchburg VOR. If you look at my 430 screen, I'm inbound from the procedure turn to my final approach fix, FA, the Lynchburg VOR. If I pass the VOR and I go to the map screen on the 430, you'll notice I'm between Lynchburg and runway 4. Look just above CDI. You notice that says GPS, correct? And it's highlighted green, meaning this is an approved LNAV approach. Better make sure you're not doing an ILS. This is actually a GPS overlay. That's an old chart, but the GPS overlay actually is allowed. The newer chart would say GPS or VOR runway 4. But I'm inbound to 4, and if I get pretty close to the missed approach point, it's going to say, look, you're only 0.15 from the missed approach, and OBS then automatically indicates a suspend warning. That means it's not going to go to the missed approach point because it thinks you're going to land. You have to tell it that you missed, but you have to wait until you pass the missed approach point. So here's how you do a missed approach point on a Garmin. You pass the missed approach point, full throttle, nose up, flaps up, gear up, climb attitude 10 degrees, then push the OBS button. After you've established a safe climb, and then it will go to the MH or missed holding point of swarm. So remember, this is another one of those commonly missed buttons on instrument check rides because people don't understand it. You have to tell it you didn't land, but you got to do it after you hit the missed approach point. If you do it before the missed approach point, it may take you on a route that may not be correct to get to the missed hold of swarm. Once I'm getting close, it's going to tell me to hold parallel. I will, and this is how you see it on the 430. I'm 0.19 miles past it. My direct track back to the swarm missed hold point is 233, but if you look straight below that, my current ground track is 053. Then that ETE would actually count up until it tells me to turn. Let's do a couple basic emergency tips before we end. Easy way to remember this is whenever you need to go to a nearest airport right now, if you do a right twist of the big knob all the way, activate your cursor, push the direct to button, and then enter 2 times, that will take you direct to the airport. If you need an instrument approach, you then simply push procedure, enter to select the approach, enter to select the first approach, which will have the lowest minimums, then select vectors and activate it. It's very quick if you know how to do it, and I'm going to show you just how quick it is. I'm messing around. We have an engine failure. Press and hold clear. Big knob to the right. Cursor. Direct to. Enter twice. Procedure. Enter. ILS. Enter. Vectors. Enter. Big knob. Activate. I'm now instantly vectored to the final approach fix at my nearest airport, which is only 5.15 miles away from my final approach plate. Again, this is a trick that a master instructor will show you, and you need to be able to do very, very quickly. There's also a pretty simple trick that hopefully all of you already know. If you push the COM flip-flop quickly, it will move the standby frequency to the active. However, if you press and hold that button for 2 seconds, it will automatically change the active radio frequency to 121.5, and you can begin your Mayday calls right away. There are also some terrain warnings that may pop up. Remember, the terrain and the obstacle databases don't have to be updated legally because they're situational awareness only, even if they are current. Just like an iPad, I'm a mountain flying expert. I'm talking to you from Big Bear. I fly in and out of the mountains. I do mountain training vacations all over the Southwest United States. And we take you into some really interesting mountain airports. And I promise you, having a terrain system does not make you qualified to fly in the mountains. If you rely on artificial terrain warnings, it's probably not going to help you out. So make sure you take a mountain training class before you go. But hey, anything that gives you more situational awareness is useful. There's also 2 warnings. It's a pop-up and a yellow terrain bar just above your en route, which shows you what accuracy your GPS OBS will indicate. So I hope you all learned a lot from tonight, including the fact that a G1000 is a very complex glass panel system because it does flight planning, maps, taxi diagrams, traffic, maybe even weather and terrain. You need to do training before you go fly the airplane. And a Garmin 430 530 is just as complex. It does all the same things. Please watch a 4-hour DVD, read the complete owner's manual, and spend several hours with a qualified master or a qualified CFI in the plane. How do you pick an instructor? Well, hey, come to California or call me and I'll come to you. But if that's not an option, ask the instructor you want to use before you pay them. How many years have you been using this, and how much time do you have in actual IMC, actual night, and actual cross country? If they really only use Direct 2, you should probably pay them for the hour and hire a new one. But just because someone can use it doesn't mean they're qualified to teach. So please be careful on that. There are an awful lot of great people that know how to use it. I got to tell you, I'm a master at all Garmin. I know nothing about Avidyne, and I'm going to refer people out to an Avidyne instructor. There are some really free, great training resources in addition to this video, which you've just watched. The ALPA Air Safety Foundation has a bunch of free classes. Then you can start spending a little bit of money. You can hire an instructor from masterflighttraining.com to come to you in your plane, or come out to SoCal and use one of ours. Or you can even start with this 4-hour DVD course, which helps supports the free programs like you just watched on pilot safety. It's 4 hours. It's got a lot of in-flight footage. It's very funny. Some people complain that our footage is jumpy. Yeah, because we do real in-flight movies. We're going to have over 2 hours of in-flight video on this. It's not something on a tripod. It's not something on a simulator. You're going to learn how to use this thing really in flight. You're going to know every page and chapter. You're going to know how to work every function in the auxiliary pages. You're going to know a lot more shortcuts and pro tips, and correct common mistakes with step-by-step instructions, especially in emergencies. So if that's of value to you and you'd like to support pilot safety, we'd love for you to share that with others. If you have any questions, jump on over to pilotsafety.org anytime. There is an Ask the Experts tab. You can talk to one of 3 master instructors in California. John Mahaney is a weather expert. Mike Jesh is an airline captain who is also very good on Garmin and teaches Wing X. You can talk to me. I'm the Garmin expert for Flight and FlyQ, IFR and mountain flying guy. But we have aviation attorneys, air traffic controllers, senior aviation medical examiners, and even an FAA employee who will answer your questions for free, as long as you don't ask us when we're getting rid of the medical, because we don't know about the third class medical either. Another quick little tip, we're happy to answer 1 or 2 questions. However, if this is something that's going to require a 30-minute or hour phone call, you probably need to hire an instructor. And we can give you a referral, but please, this is an all-volunteer group, and please just use it wisely. But we'd love to help you in any way we can. There's also a bunch more videos, downloads, and even upcoming classes on that website. So use that Ask the Experts tab anytime you need it. So it's just about time for me to wrap up. We're just under 50 minutes. I think my voice is about done. I want to thank you all for watching this free video. Please promote the link, tell everybody to visit our website, share it with as many people as you can. Let's change general aviation to something that's safe and not something that shows up on the evening news. If you need anything, you call or email me anytime. Pilotsafety.org. As always, fly safe.